everyone, welcome to Statecraft IS Academy. So let's get started with the current affairs. Our first topic of discussion is Karman line. So in our last video, we discussed about a new Shepard rocket system that would take astronauts past the Karman line. So today we'll discuss what Karman line is. So it is basically an attempt to define a boundary between the Earth's atmosphere and the outer space. And this line was named after the Theodore von Karman. He was an American engineer. He was the first person to calculate the altitude at which the atmosphere becomes too thin to support the aeronautical flights, and he arrived at 83.6 kilometers. The Federation Aeronautics International defines the Karman line as the altitude of 100 kilometers, that is equals to 62 miles above the Earth's mean sea level. This Federation Aeronautics International is an international standard setting and record keeping body for aeronautics and astronautics. However, the other organizations do not use this definition, and there is no international law defining the edge of the space and therefore the limit of the national airspace. Also, this line is approximately at the turbopause, above which the atmospheric gases are not well mixed. As you can see in this picture, this Karman line, it is in the thermosphere. Next we'll talk about Jeevan Vayu. So the IIT Ropar has developed the nation's first power-free CPAP device, Jeevan Vayu. The CPAP is the continuous positive airway pressure. So this Jeevan Vayu can function even without electricity, and it is adapted to both kinds of oxygen generation units like O2 oxygen cylinders, oxygen pipelines in hospitals. It is a leak-proof, low-cost delivery system. It can deliver high-flow oxygens. Next, we'll discuss what continuous positive airway pressure is. So it's a treatment method for patients having breathing problems during sleep called the sleep apnea. So this machine uses mild air pressure to keep the airways open for easy breathing. It also used to treat infants whose lungs have not fully developed, and the treatment is all the more necessary during the early stages of COVID-19 infection. Also, it reduces the lung damage and allows the patient to recover from the inflammatory effects. Next, we'll discuss about Ekam Bharanatha temple. So it's a Hindu temple which is dedicated to Lord Shiva, and it is located in Kanchipuram, Tamil Nadu. It is significant to the Hindu sect of Saivism as one of the temples associated with the 5 elements, that is the Panchabhuta Sthalas, and specially the element of the earth or the Prithvi. The Shiva is worshipped as Ekam Bhareshwar or Ekam Bharanathar, and is represented by the Lingam, which is ideal referred to as the Prithvi Lingam. The present imaginary structure was built during the Chola dynasty in the 19th century, while the later expansions were attributed to the Vijayanagar rulers. And it is maintained and administered by the Hindu Religious and Charitable Endowments Department of the Government of Tamil Nadu. Next, we'll talk about the UN High-Level Dialogue on Desertification, Land Degradation and Drought. So, recently the Prime Minister of India has delivered a keynote address at the United Nations High-Level Dialogue on Desertification, Land Degradation and Drought. So, the dialogue was organized by the President of United Nations General Assembly, and it focused on the international community's attention on land issues, so that they can generate political will for implementing the land solutions within COVID-19 adaptations and recovery strategies. The dialogue encourages all the member states to adopt and implement land degradation neutrality targets and national drought plans. We'll discuss what land degradation neutrality is. So, the Indian Prime Minister presided over the 14th session of the Conference of Party to the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification in September. And India had for the first time hosted this 14th session of Conference of Parties of the UNCCD at Greater Noida in 2019. The theme of this conference was to restore land and sustain future. And during the conference, a Delhi declaration was issued. So this can be an important fact with the prelims. This declaration was called for a better access over land, and it also emphasized on gender sensitive transformative projects. Also, the country parties have agreed to make the Sustainable Development Goal target of achieving land degradation neutrality by 2030. And there was also talk about the Peace Forest Initiative. So it was an initiative to the South Korea to use ecological restoration as a peace building process. It aims at addressing the issue of land degradation in conflict-torn border areas, and to build a trust between the communities living there and the between enemies countries in particular. Next, India has also called upon the leaders of UNCCD to conceive a global water action agenda which is central to the land degradation neutrality strategy. India also advocated on the need to eradicate the menace of single-use plastic. So we have been talking about this land degradation neutrality. This basically means a state whereby the amount and quality of land resources which are necessary to support the ecosystem functions, services and enhance food security should remain stable and or increase with a specified temporal and spatial scale. So it should increase in a sustainable manner. Next, we'll talk about the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. It was established in 1994 and it focuses on arid, semi-arid, dry, subhumid areas called the dry lands, where some of the most vulnerable ecosystems and peoples are found. And remember this fact, it is important for prelims, that it is a sole legal binding. It is legally binding international agreement which links environment and development to sustainable land management. Also, it is the only convention stemming from the direct recommendation of the Rio Conference Agenda 21. And UNCCD is one of the 3 Rio conventions. So, during the Rio conference, which was held in 1992, 3 conventions came out of it. So, one is UNCCD, the other 2 are the Convention on Biological Diversity and United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So the convention's UNCCD's 2018 to 2030 strategic framework is a comprehensive international commitment to attain land degradation neutrality, which aims at restoration of productivity of the degraded land, also enhance the livelihood of the people dependent on them, then mitigate the impact of droughts on vulnerable populations. The convention focuses on having a bottom-up approach to achieve its goal by involving the local participation, involving basically the local communities. And the nodal ministry for the convention in India is the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Next, we'll discuss what desertification is. So it's a process by which biological productivity of dry lands, which include arid and semi-arid lands, this biological productivity of these dry lands is reduced due to natural or man-made factors. So, and some of the causes of desertification are deforestation, overcultivation, overgrazing, imprudent irrigation practices, etc. So, there is also a Bonn challenge relating to it. It is an international effort to bring 150 million hectares of the world's degraded and deforested land into restoration by 2020 and 350 million hectares by 2030. India is also a part of this challenge. Next, we'll talk about Bharitla Suchuspani Tapani. So, in the mid-20th century, researchers from the Indian Statistical Institute carried out extensive studies on the rocks of the Yerapalli Formation in what is now known as Telangana, uncovering the several fossil fuels. So by studying some of these specimens, the team has thrown light on the carnivorous reptile that lived 240 million years ago. They named it Bharitla Suchustapani, and the reptile belonged to a family of extinct reptiles named the Erythrosuchidae. And in the Telugu language, this Bhari means huge, Tala means head, and Suchus is the name of the Egyptian crocodile-headed deity. And this species is named after the paleontologist. So note, this paleontologists basically are the ones who study the history of Earth or history of life on Earth through the fossil records. So this species was named after Tapan Roy Chowdhury. And talking about the features, they are robust. This species, they are robust animals with big heads and large teeth, and these probably predated over smaller reptiles, and they were approximately the size of an adult male, and they might have been the largest predators in the ecosystem. Talking about the Yerapalli formation, so it is located in the Pranhita Godavari basin in Telangana, and it is a Triassic rock formation. Triassic is basically the geological period, which is 50.6 million years ago, and it is a Triassic rock formation which consists of mainly the red mudstones. Next we'll discuss about Dagmara hydroelectric project. So a memorandum of understanding has been signed between NHPC Limited and Bihar State Hydroelectric Power Corporation Limited for the implementation of Dagmara hydroelectric project over the Kosi River. So the project is located near the village Dagmara on the Kosi River, and it is a run of the river scheme. So this run of the river scheme basically uses the water, which uses the natural downward flow of rivers and micro turbine generators to capture the kinetic energy carried by water. So this water is taken from the river at a very high point and diverted to a channel, pipeline, or a pressurized pipeline. This project will have a total capacity of generating 130 megawatt energy. Talking about the significance, it will be a landmark project in the power sector scenario of Bihar as far as green power is concerned. And apart from generating clean and green power, the execution will boost the socio-economic and infrastructure development in the area, also create employment opportunities. Next, we'll talk about the Kosi River. So it's a trans-boundary river which flows through Tibet, Nepal and India, and it has its source in Tibet. Major tributaries of it include San Kosi, Arun and Tambol. Also, its an unstable nature causes course changes, and the Kosi River actually carries the maximum amount of silt and sand after the Brahmaputra in India. And it is also known as the sorrow of Bihar due to the extreme flooding that it causes. Next, wait a second. Next, we see a map of rivers of the North India. See, this map is very important from geography point of view. In prelims, the questions come such as to arrange the rivers from north to south or west to east. For example, if we arrange Gomti, Ghagra, Kosi, Gandhak and Teesta in west to east direction, so first will come Gomti, then Ghagra, then Gandhak, then Kosi and then Teesta. Now all these rivers are very important. Go through it and remember where they are placed. Capture a picture of it in your mind and remember it, and also in which states this river flows, their source, and for Ganga the right bank tributaries and the left bank tributaries. So all for today guys. If you like the video, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you.